Let's go.
Dr. Rosie Milligan, one of the most sought-after speakers on the circuit today. Her live internet talk show, Express Yourself, is the most provocative, thought-provoking, and talked-about radio show on the internet. There's no holds barred, and Dr. Milligan puts the B in bold. She brings it every Tuesday live at 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Dr. Rosie has been proclaimed the most provocative female writer of the century. Her books include Satisfying the Black Man and Black Woman Sexually Made Simple, Why Black Men Choose White Women, and the book Nigga Please. These books have raised eyebrows across the country. She has authored 21 books and published 350 titles for authors nationwide. Check Dr. Rosie out at drrosie.com for her books, articles, and archives of her internet talk show. Sit at the feet of wisdom. Dr. Milligan is indeed a timekeeper and scorekeeper. She is the clock, calendar, and almanac for Black America. You need to hear her.
Again, good morning. You're listening to the Express Yourself Hour. I am your host,
Recording
Dr.
in progress.
Rosie Milligan. I guess I need to repeat who I am. I am your host, Dr. Rosie Milligan, coming to you live with nothing but straight talk. Folks, that's how we do it around here, nothing but straight talk. We talk about stuff really you may not hear any place else but here on the Express Yourself Hour. My co-host, she's in a car. She's riding. There's no telling where she is. That's Dr. Andre Anthony. I don't know if she's in this state or out of the state or in space. I don't know where the girl is. How are you, Dr. Andre?
I'm good. I am in San Francisco this morning.
Wow.
Yep.
Yes, all over the world.
Yep. So I had to find a place. I'm in the beautiful historic area with all the big, beautiful buildings downtown. So I said I found a spot to pull over so I can get on.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're here. I need your energy. Folks, we have a show today. I tell you, I just been thinking about it and just so excited about it because our guest reminds me a lot of myself, someone who never given up, someone who always standing in the gap, fighting for what's right, and knowing that it's not just about me, because whatever we correct it for those who coming on behind us. So I think we should always think about the future. And so my guest today, well, let me tell you what we're going to talk about first, and then I'll tell you my guest. We're going to talk about, our topic is 22 years accused but never guilty. Can you guys imagine? 22 years. Most people can't even stay married that long. I'm just saying. 22 years accused but never guilty. A black father's war against a justice system that got it wrong. They get it wrong sometimes. When they get it wrong, you need someone to step into your world that can help you get right. And that's what we're witnessing today. Someone who stepped into a young man's world to help him get it right when the system had it wrong. 22 years. You may have been warring against something for a long time, but I want you to know that time should never be the figure as to whether you're going to stop or whether you're going forward. It was a poem once called Don't Quit. You all might have remembered a thing, Don't Quit. Because at the very end, that last lick might be the one that bring you over. So, my guest is Mr. Dameon Wroe. He's the author of The Road to Redemption, a singer, father of two twins, beautiful entrepreneurs, community activists, and most of all, he's a person that's concerned about justice, not just for himself, but also for others. And I'm so proud that this is unprecedented to have by his side his defense attorney who helped him to cross that bridge. Saw something in him, saw truth, saw justice. I'm so impressed. That's Attorney Donna Calabria. I may have messed his name up, so he's going to give it to you right. But he's been practicing. He's a defense attorney. He been on this road a long time. He have seen it all. He can smell justice and he can smell injustice. He been at it long enough to see it miles. As my daddy said, he can see it way down the road. A man of integrity, a man of character, a man of justice. Let me introduce and say hello to Attorney Calabria. Good morning.
Morning, and thank you for the kind words.
Thank you so much for having you on here today. And Dameon, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. I think blessed and highly favored would be an understatement today, but nevertheless, blessed and highly favored.
Okay. Well, we're talking about a man who was accused. We're talking about 22 years. Damon said to me, I said, why did you never gave up? But I'm sure you felt like it at different times, right? Were you discouraged with the people saying, man, just let it go. This is the system. You can't beat it. This is your lot. What was said to you, Damon?
That's actually a fair statement. Pretty much all those things were said to me. And
well, first let's go back. Let's let the audience know what happened, so they'll understand the power of what behind really happened to you. 22 years.
yeah, so 22 years ago, while I was simultaneously processing and applying to be a law enforcement officer with the local police department here in Southern California, I took a job as an armed security officer. I was working in a well-known city, Rancho Cucamonga, and unfortunately for me and a lot of other people involved, I encountered a young man that night who did not belong on the property that I was working at. My responsibility and the only reason I was asked to work at that property was based on my extensive training and experience in security as a whole. They thought I would be a good fit for that property because they were having some issues with some of the residents were getting their cars broken into. Some of the residents were getting their detached garages broken into, so they could never figure out or catch the people who were doing it. And so my company that I was working for at the time, they hired me to patrol that account. And that is the night that I encountered this young man driving a pickup truck who clearly didn't belong there. And long story short, I had a small interaction with him. At some point in time, he got very belligerent because of the line of questioning that I was asking him. And the reason, and I think this is a key thing that people miss. A lot of people have said to me, why not just let him go? The reason that is, and that I never got a chance to explain to people, is because had he complied and assured me that he did in fact live there, I wasn't going to tell him to do anything. Because if he lived there, I was going to let him be. But every simple question that I asked him led me to ask him another question because I could tell by my line of questioning he was lying. And normally when people are lying, they have something to hide. And so he ended up backing out of his parking space in a very threatening and violent manner, striking me with the side of his vehicle, actually temporarily pinned me to a parked car right next to me, and then he took off. Well, in the state of California, that's assault with a deadly weapon, 245 of the Penal Code. So he was arrestable for a felony at that point, so I pursued him with the intent to arrest him for that felony. And at the gate where people come in and go, when he could have easily, he had such a jump on me, he could have easily left the property before I even caught up to him. By the time I did catch up to him, he was lying in wait as soon as I turned the corner. And because of past experiences where I was also involved in separate shooting incidents with other companies, I knew that when I turned that corner, I was in the kill zone. And all he had to do was crack his door open wide enough to stick a pistol out the side of it and start firing at my windshield. So I had the drop on him. And when I gave him multiple commands to surrender, told him he was under arrest, told him to shut the vehicle off multiple times, shouting at the top of my lungs in the middle of the night, hoping to wake the residents up so that somebody can look out of their window and be a witness to what was going on, he thought it would be a good idea to turn the steering wheel in my direction and run me over to get away. And that's when the shooting occurred. And unfortunately, he was struck with one of my rounds, and he expired at the scene.
Okay, let's go to, because I know it's a long story, and I know a lot of people going to want to talk to you, and they want to hear from your attorney. So you guys got the setup as to what happened. Okay, so from there, you end up incarcerated, correctly?
Correct.
Okay. How long were you incarcerated?
I was incarcerated for the better half of a year.
Okay. And what happened that it took so long? That was 22 years ago, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So actually, with that incarceration, so you had on your record as a felon?
Correct.
Okay. So you were fighting these 22 years to do what?
To basically have my rights restored as they were prior to when this incident ever occurred. Because the reality is, when the shooting was investigated by the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department Detective Bureau, they made a statement to the news media about the incident, and at the conclusion of their statement to the media, it was on the front page of the Inland Valley newspaper, that they were not allowing any new witnesses to come forward because their investigation had been concluded. Their conclusion was that the shooting was justifiable homicide in self-defense, and the DA prosecuted me anyway for murder.
Okay. Now I guess it's time for me to talk to the attorney, because I've never heard of such. Anyway, that's what's throwing me. Anyway, attorney, can you speak to that for me? I'm confused now. He said what had been said, but then anyway. How does anyway come in after what he just said?
That's the miscarriage of justice in this case. And the reason it proceeded was the young man that was the aggressor in this case was a privileged young man from a family, and he was going to be an heir to a very big furniture firm. And he was white, and Dameon is black. And that played a part in this, because had the assailant, as I call him, who tried to run him over once and then was in the process of trying to run him down and kill him, had he been black and the security officer white and the sheriff's department said justifiable homicide, this would have gone nowhere. This would have gone nowhere. But I believe at that time in our society, that's why the power of a wealthy family forced this to be prosecuted. And Dameon's defense was so much on his side, of the law was on his side, that during the course of the trial, something happened that in my 50 years of trying cases has never happened before. All the sheriffs and the SWAT team were attending the trial, and they were all on my side of the defense side of the courtroom. They were not on the side of the prosecutor. And at all the breaks, they'd talk to me and tell me, I don't know why this is going, what an injustice this is. He's totally an innocent person. So that's the backdrop of what happened at that time. And we'll never know, but my belief is it was a wealthy, privileged, young white man from a very wealthy family that caused this injustice and caused Dameon to not only have to suffer the consequences of custody for that period of time. But as you've just heard from him, he still has to have therapy over this incident. And the evidence was overwhelming as to the facts of his side of the story. After the bullet was fired, the car was going so fast that it left a lot of tread just in the slow down and stop of it. So it's a miscarriage of justice is the best way that I can put it. And I'm glad that at this day and time, he has not only got his record totally clean, but he's showed everyone what a quality young man he is with what he's done with his life since that day.
Wow, that is powerful. And during that time, Dameon, the record that was, held against you, what was it preventing you from doing? Let's look at some of the roadblocks. You were out. You were no longer incarcerated. How did that impact your life other than the trauma?
Well, the immediate thing was that it took me almost 2 years to regain employment. And because that first year went by where it was so difficult for me to find a job. So just as a precursor, so that you can better understand the charges that were dismissed. So because I had such an outstanding attorney fighting on my behalf in the courtroom, we won the murder case with flying colors. But as my attorney just said, this boy was a privileged white kid from a wealthy family, and I later learned through my employer and some of my supporters and family members that they were very well connected to the courthouse where I was prosecuted. That's why the district attorney would not let the case go. So this was a case where, they want to try you for everything because their goal ultimately was to get a conviction of some sort. And the reason I know they were pushing for that conviction is because a civil trial or a civil case was going to be filed right after. Well, what helps a civil case? A felony conviction in criminal court. And so, although I beat the murder charge, they also instructed the jury on voluntary manslaughter. When the jury came back out of the deliberation room, they deadlocked on the voluntary manslaughter charge. However, they deadlocked 7-5 in favor of acquittal, which lets you know right then and there that the jury didn't really wholeheartedly believe the DA even had a case. So in order for me to be free, I had to allow myself to get railroaded into taking a plea deal because at the time I could not afford financially to go through another trial. The financial aspect was one thing, but it was also Russian roulette because once we beat the biggest charge, which was the murder charge, I knew they were going to do everything in their power to railroad me into convicting me for the voluntary manslaughter. So how I got out of that was I took a plea deal for involuntary manslaughter. And that's what left the felony charges on my record.
Wow. Dameon, you just make me think now, wow, how many people, because they don't have the power to fight, are taking plea bargains, which is ruining their life for the rest of their life. And you don't just ruin a life. If you have children that's dependent on you, you ruin the life of a family. And even goes down to their family. So, wow, let me go back to attorney. What led you to take this case?
Well, we're talking about initially, people come to you, you interview them, you talk to the family, talk to the defendant, and make a determination as to whether or not it's something you want to deal with. I knew from the very outset I had known Dameon from another situation And so I knew I already cared about the family and Dameon. Now, but handling these kind of cases are costly. And part of what the DA uses is not only the cost of it, but the incarceration of somebody, that they put something on the table so that you'll be ready to do it even though you don't want to, because the bottom line is you get out of jail right away. And if you want to continue to fight it, while you're fighting it, you're actually serving a sentence of another 6 months or another year in custody. So what happened in this situation, when the jury hung, I did not handle it further beyond that. I was getting ready to come back in, and I was actually quite surprised because after the trial's over, I'm no longer the counsel after everything was done. And they're resetting it, and I was very surprised to hear when I was called that he was taking a plea. And I said, Dameon, I don't think you should take a plea. You've done nothing wrong. It's many years ago. I don't remember the exact conversation. I just know that I felt I would have thought it should have been fought further. But he wanted to be out of custody. He'd been in for 6, 8, 10 months. And now when you do a retrial, you've got to start all over again. And they easily can extend it 6 months to a year. And that's time in custody for him. So he took the deal. And to this day, I will always feel like it should have been litigated because he didn't do anything wrong. He had a total defense to what occurred. And fortunately for Dameon, the reason it's taken so long to get it off his record is there was new legislation that was passed that now permits somebody in this kind of a situation to check all the boxes, which he did, because he's basically an innocent young man who the system ate up a little bit. And now his record with this new legislation got into court, and he's now clean. But what they can't give him back is the time he spent in jail, and what they can't give him back is the nights he wakes up and still can envision what went on that night and still can envision, and the mental issues with him. And I think it's just a darn shame that he is not compensated for the suffering that he has done, when in fact he really did nothing wrong. You know, he mentioned why he got the job. They were looking for somebody because there was so much robbery and burglary and problems in that unit. And that's what caused this whole thing. It's what he was there for, to prevent it. And instead of being able to prevent it, he had somebody try to kill him. He didn't mention to you that when the car that the assailant was driving came at him, he had no avenue of exit. He had nowhere. There was a building right behind him. The gate was opening, and he had no way to get anywhere. And when he drew his gun, the car turned, and just as he fired, the guy's left arm went up, and it went into his left side and hit him in a vital organ. Otherwise, it would have just hit him in the shoulder and diverted him from what he was doing. But the bottom line is, Dameon was innocent from the day this ever happened, and to this day he's innocent, and finally the courts have respected that, and he has no record.
Wow. Someone had put in the chat, I think they'd asked the question, could the judge have been sued? Or is there any lawsuit, Dameon? Is there anything taking place because of what was done to you, or just at least you're free now?
So, and I'm sure Mr. Calabria will expound on this a little bit after my statement. So, based on my training and experience, the question you asked brings up the question of statute of limitations. But the statute of limitations can be a slippery slope, because it was brought to my attention during the construction of the book, Road to Redemption. It was brought to my attention that if new evidence is discovered, then that new evidence can reset the clock on the statute of limitations. For example, it took me more than 20 years to write the book, okay? But in the process of writing the book, right when I was almost finishing it, getting it ready for publication, in my research of facts that I was including in my story, I learned that the family of the person who tried to kill me was awarded a civil judgment in excess of $6 million. Okay? But when they got $6 million, they didn't get $6 million because I shot their son in self-defense. They got $6 million because the company who hired me to patrol that apartment complex in Rancho Cucamonga had an insurance policy in place that specifically stated that there would be only one armed officer at that location. And that armed officer at that location was supposed to only be the owner of the company. That was never disclosed to me. Because I have sense enough to know throughout my many years of experience that if I'm not covered working somewhere, I'm not showing up. Because keep in mind, 4 years prior to this incident, I was involved in a previous shooting where I had witnessed a felony armed robbery occur at the place where I was then working at. And when they finished robbing the two victims at gunpoint and tried to make a getaway, they had to go by where I was at in order to get away. And so now me and the passenger of this moving vehicle are shooting it out in the middle of a parking lot as I'm trying to stop the car. And he puts a 12-gauge shotgun out the passenger window and just opens up on me. So I'm in the fight for my life. So that's why when I had this encounter at the apartment complex where I approached the guy's vehicle when he was parked in the truck, I was very cautious of how I was talking to him, where I was standing, how I was approaching him, because I had already been in a shooting before, and I wasn't going to get shot at again if he had a weapon in the truck. And that was my first question that I asked him. Do you have any weapons inside this truck? And he never gave me a straight answer, by the way. And
Hey,
so,
Damon, I'm not cutting you off, but it's so much I need to ask you, and I know that our audience have questions for you too. So
sure.
I think they got to the story. It's loud and clear, and it's clear that we have so many people who are encountered with such. I wanted to do this show because I wanted parents, I wanted family members to understand the power of fighting and never giving up and not allowing such an incident to become their legacy. Because you have two young men, and I can imagine what that must feel like for you, for them to know the truth that was handed down. But before you come back, I want to stop at this time. One of my guests might have a comment or a question. I'm going to allow you to do that at that time. I think that's Brother David, a talk show host from back east, have joined us this morning. So, good morning, Mr. David.
Good morning, Dr. Rosie, and to your guest as well. Fascinating story, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The question that I have, just quickly, and so other people can get in, is what would you recommend for other people, and that can go to your attorney as well, who are in the same situation or similar situations? How would you advise them at whether or not to take that plea deal or whether or not to continue to fight? And what was your thought process behind taking that plea deal even though you knew you were innocent?
I can
well, I'll
tell
tell
you
you,
want to go home.
yeah, true story. True story. I did want to go home, but however,
I can also respond to that because the scenario was why I was not attorney at that point. When there's a hung jury on the lessers, so to speak, whether at that point representation is in, and we were still talking. I was talking with his family about further representation. Well, in a criminal matter, a defendant always has an attorney. So the public defender took the case while I was talking to the family about further representation. And I have a very, very heavy criminal calendar. I've done for the many, many years, I've done a lot of death penalty cases. And so we were talking about being retained for a future trial. The public defender talked Dameon into taking this because he called me. I was started in another trial. And I said, no, this shouldn't be done. So you're asking why was it done? And I would suggest it was done because the public defender convinced Dameon that it was better to just take this and get out of custody and not have to deal with it further. And for your question to me, I would not have done that because I always believed in Dameon, as I do to this day, and I believed that I would have gone to my grave fighting that case. But there's other things that come into play when you take on a case that is 4 to 6 months. You still have a life you have to live. So while negotiating to figure out a way I could still represent Dameon and his family would be able to afford it, that is when the plea was entered at that point. And I wish all of us, when we do things in life, we wish we could go back. And I wish I could go back to that day and yank him out of that jail cell and hit him upside of the head and say, Dameon, you done nothing wrong. Let's fight it. They will never beat me on this case. Because it was no more an involuntary manslaughter than it was a voluntary, than it was a second, than it was a first-degree murder. None of them fit. When a guy assaults you with a vehicle and then is driving a vehicle at you, you can use any force you need to protect your own life. And there'd be no jury that I've ever been in front of that would have convicted him of that. So I think it's a sad, tragic part of this story that he's carried this baggage for so many years. And remember, 22 years ago, I was a much younger man at that time, and it wasn't so easy just to take cases pro bono when they were serious and took a lot of time.
Absolutely. But you're still by his side. You never left.
I would never leave because I have always regretted that he took any plea. Yeah. In a perfect world, I just would have stayed the case to the end of time and fought it, because no one would have ever convicted him since he had a clear defense. And with juries, let me just, I don't want to take too much of your time, but a lot of times when a jury doesn't understand the consequences of what they're doing, like they don't know sentencing, they don't know what can happen to people, they just go with the facts. And oftentimes they'll go with some kind of a lesser because they really think they're doing the defendant justice by getting rid of the murder and the second-degree murder, but they're really not. And that's why it hung 7-5. 7 people were in that jury room saying, there's no way this guy did anything, And so for that reason, they could never have convicted him. I want you to understand that. I'm not saying I would maybe gotten 12-0 like I did on the murder in the second, but they would have never gotten 12 people to convict him of not a lesser, of a voluntary, an involuntary assault with a deadly. None of it would have happened. So that's what I carry with me. Being a lawyer, that's what I carry with me because he is a good man, and I'm just happy that now he can get on this show and let the world know he's totally exonerated. Because wow. I knew he was exonerated from the day I started the case.
That's interesting. My sister is an attorney in Atlanta, Georgia, and she often talks about these type of cases, David. She talks about because my sister always wanted to be Perry Mason ever since she was a little girl. But she has cases. She said, I know I can win the case. I know I can win. But then you have the parents, you have other people on the other side where you have to stay long and you might as well take it. So it just grieves my heart to think of how many people who are behind bars who know that they they didn't do something. I'm just wondering how that must feel, because that lives on with your children, that you did what they say you did. You follow what I'm saying? That's a legacy. So I can understand why Damon, my co-host, has a hand up. Go ahead, co-host.
First of all, Damon, I really want to thank you for sharing your story. I want to thank you for being a fighter and staying the course. I also want to thank the attorney for his commitment and dedication to your case and to you and your family. That says a lot about him as an individual. I don't know the statistics on it, but I've been in this world for a long time, and I've dealt with children's court, and I've dealt with juvenile court, with the system, and unfortunately, public defenders. That's one of the first things that they tell our children, our African American children, and our young people, to take a plea because you get to go home. Not telling them, the impact of the ramifications of what that's going to do for them throughout their life. Just like Damon, had to, work on, being re-employed and being able to get back in the world. And that's one of the things that I think that's just devastating for our young people. And a lot of times they're not even dealing with a murder case. It might be something, lesser than that, but they tell them to take a plea. So I just really want to say that I think this conversation is important for everybody that's listening, people who have family, to understand how important it is to educate our young people and our families on how important it is to sometimes just be still and listen and gather as much information as you can before you make a decision. And knowing that home is where you want to be, but doing right by yourself, I think, is more important. So again, thank you so much. This is a great, great show.
Thank you for your comment. I really appreciate that. And to add to what my attorney just spoke on, he was right. Once the public defender came in after the murder trial, everything changed. Now, keep in mind, at the beginning of the show, we talked about this kid, 19-year-old man who knew right from wrong and chose to do wrong, was an heir of a very wealthy family who had a furniture dynasty, right? And so I knew I was up against that. I knew I was up against their influence that they had in that whole entire courthouse. They had more people on their team than I did. They had more financial backing than I did. And another thing, and I'm not going to speak about it too long because it's something that I go into great detail in the book about. When Mr. Calabria left after the murder trial, the public defender that was assigned to me, listen to this, took me into the judge's chambers. Do you hear me? Took me into the judge's chambers, sat down with me at a table where that judge looked me in my face and told me multiple times what a sweet deal I was getting. Now, if that doesn't speak volumes to them being in cahoots, what does? And that's what I was up against. The moment I left that judge's chambers is the moment duress began. Because I knew they were trying to railroad me. And the way that judge looked at me, I can never explain to any of you on this show. His eyes said, either you take the deal or we're going to get you, N-word. Wow. That was the message I got. Dang. And so I took the deal because I wanted to go home, because I knew if I didn't take that deal, they were going to find a way to railroad me into a conviction. And that's all they wanted, was a conviction anyway, because right after the conviction, they pursued the civil case. And they got a $6 million judgment. Guess what I got? A year in jail and a felony.
And memories that
I'm still in counseling for.
Never forget that. I'm glad you're in counseling. I really am, and I'm sure. Go ahead, attorney.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that that's just such a flaw in the system, because anyone who is innocent should fight, fight, fight. Because Dameon never should have taken that, but the system wears you down. That's actually such improper conduct of a judge.
Yes, it is.
I never knew this. All I knew was when the public defender called me, he had the courtesy to call me. I was already starting in another trial. And I said, no, you shouldn't do that. There's no way he should take anything. But that's where the system fails, when something like this happens to a young man who clearly all he was doing was defending his own life. That's all he was doing. So it's a tragedy. And again, I'm just happy he's here. And you can see what an impressive young man he is. He's written more than one book, and he's articulate. And it's sad that his life was detoured like that. And by the way, the district attorney who tried the case, once I got off it, and is now in a nice position in the DA's office.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah, that makes sense. Does this family, Dameon, are you still in this San Bernardino area?
No.
Okay.
I never was in the San Bernardino area. I just worked there.
Oh, okay. All right.
You know what? I'm thinking about how this story would have ended if that young man that tried to run over you had have been a black man. I wonder how that
Would have been
story
different.
would have ended. Attorney, from your perspective, how would this story have ended?
Well, but my position all along has always been, it's so clear to me, if the colors were switched between two people, no case would have ever been filed. It's that simple. And if the assailant had been a black man, is that your question?
Yes.
That would have given, they wouldn't have cared as much. They cared because this was a young white boy, privileged young kid, who Dameon didn't mention. He also had drugs in his system, because they did in the autopsy, he had drugs in his system.
That's true.
And he I believe he was there for a purchase of drugs. But the whole point is it would have been very different. This case was more a matter of color than facts.
Wow. Now, for those, I know there's someone else here that had a question, but I want you to take this story, and you got to get the book. Let me just back up. You got to read the book, The Road to Redemption. He's holding up. Folks, it is so important, because this could be your cousin, your nephew, somebody in your family, one of your loved ones. Just to think how many never get a chance to make that comeback after they serve that term for pleading, for taking a plea bargain. It doesn't end when they get out. Sure, now you have 2 years versus 10. But those other 8 years, you're still in bondage. You're like you're still not free. So sometimes I've heard people say, I wished I had just did my time versus getting out and being on the type of probation they have you on. Attorney, would you speak to that? Because I've heard people say, I wished I had stayed. Because the type of restriction that I'm up against by being free is an automatic, almost guarantee that I'll be back in jail. Can you speak to that?
The system doesn't allow people to really understand the complete consequences of entering a plea to almost any offense. It has a lot of consequences. You have sometimes probation. Sometimes you have parole. You have the inability to get a job if it's a felony conviction, and that's the reason that the new legislation in California has permitted people to clean their record of many, many crimes that they pled to under these kind of circumstances, so that they do have the ability to go and get employed. So a defendant, and this is one of the problems, a defendant doesn't hear when they're telling you the consequences. They hear that you'll be released from custody today.
They hear go home. They hear some.
Yeah, that's what they hear. That's what they hear. You'll go home. Yams. Yeah, that's exactly it, and that's what they hear. So what whoever was just speaking and said, parents, you should sit down and talk with your children. You should let your children know some of the things we're discussing today and how to deal with it in the real world.
And Dr. Milligan, if I may just interject and piggyback on what Mr. Calabria just said, I came on this show this morning with a very strong message to Black America. And I think this is the appropriate time to say it. Because of the nature of what we're talking about, what happened to me could have happened to anyone. Okay? And I just want to caution people listening to this show, whether it's live or on a replay, whatever the situation is, we cannot be out here as a culture of Black folk putting 20-inch rims on everything, okay? Spending thousands and thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, I don't know where these people get it from, on jewelry, so that when we get on our Instagram and TikTok page, we can have the biggest gold necklace and the flashiest car. And, when we get into legal trouble, we can't afford an attorney like Mr. Calabria, because there's certain cases that carry so much exposure time in prison. You cannot afford to go to trial with a public pretender. And that's what they are. They're public pretenders. They're pretending to care about you getting home. They don't. Their caseload is too high. And their work volume is too high for them to care about just your case. So we have to really educate ourselves on the law, not only on the law, educate ourselves on the differences between felonies and misdemeanors. Because if we don't understand how the law works, when we finally get into trouble, we're not going to know how to get ourselves out of it. So if you have money for all these other things that have no real value, make sure you have money to hire an attorney like Mr. Calabria when your loved one unjustly falls into the trouble I fell into. I didn't go looking for trouble. Trouble came looking for me.
Dameon, I think what you're saying, the point is well taken. That, how they tell you, David, that you should always have an emergency fund. I'm telling you, I think you need to have, a family should have a legal fund set up. And Dameon, I want to clarify this, because Dameon's talking about the defense attorneys. A lot of them, they do care. They're like the physicians. See, I understand the profession in this country now on the medical side and the legal side. You have people who went into the business to practice and to do good. But the way the system is set up, just like in the medical field, when they're saying to the doctor, well, you need to see 55 patients, your load could be 65 patients a day. For someone who went in, Damon, to be a great doctor, and that's what they want to do. But now you're pressured by the people you work for to perform or not get a good evaluation or no longer get a contract. I just want to bring that out because many of those attorneys are great attorneys. They're great people who really do love and care, but the system forced them to disassociate themselves from that. So I had to say that.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. But when you're a defendant sitting in custody and you realize you don't belong there, you have to assume that they don't care. Because your life is on the line.
Yeah.
It's not checkers, it's chess.
Right.
Yeah. I want to add too, while we're talking about this, and really encourage and admonish people. Like I said earlier, families need to have these conversations because it also happens in children's court. They have public defenders that represent the children, and they represent the family, and they will say and do anything to get past their cases because they have a huge workload too. And I just want to encourage parents in that arena too to, don't jump to making any decisions and don't take everything that they say. I'm dealing with a case right now, and the mother, she's been to court multiple times. Each time she goes, she has a different attorney. And she went the last time, and this new attorney told her, oh, don't worry, you don't have to come to court when you have your court date. I'll just speak on your behalf. And when she sat down next to me, I said, don't believe that. You show up every time. You want the judge to see you in that courtroom. It don't matter. They want to keep moving and go fast. And we heard them talk for other people who were not present. So we have to be very careful as families, of making like wise decisions. This right here, I think is a great eye opener, and will really bring families together to have those hard and meaningful and important conversations.
And you're right. These conversations need to be going on and on. It needs to be the topic of discussion because, folks, it is too many people, like I say, it's not one person. When you hurt one person like this, it's not just that person. You got their children. And you got their children now, attorney, who can't believe in the system. And the worst thing can happen to be in a situation where people don't believe in the system, that the system is not working. That's what's so hard-hearted for young people now. Feel like they're just back against the wall. If they don't have money, they feel like nothing is working. So I'm just grateful, and I want to say thank you to the attorney for stepping up for justice. We just need more people to do that. I can't thank you enough. And your example is going to call, just like, Dameon, what you're doing is going to change lives. What the attorney doing is going to change life. But what you have done is going to inspire some other attorneys to step up to the plate because they see what it means to do the right thing. So it helps. This is going to be powerful on both sides for everybody.
And let me tell you why what you said is so important. And I know we may not have time to go into it, but it's okay because it's all in the book. You guys can read it in the book. This is another story. But since we're talking about malicious prosecutions and injustices, this is actually my second time in my life being maliciously prosecuted for a crime I never did. And this is Mr. Calabria's second time representing me, coming to my rescue. This man has saved my life twice because my skin is black, and any black man will do most of the time.
And you're going to save many lives by telling your story. So what both of you have done is going to be so impactful because people need to know, never give up. They need to know that if you pursue, there's somebody, God got somebody out there that's going to be a ram in the bush that's going to help you. So you can never say, this thing here has twofold. Number one, it's saying that justice is not in the eyes of color. Sometimes you may have a person who want to help you, and then you feel, well, no, if he's not black, I can't. Folks, it is some dynamics that's taking place. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? It is some dynamics that's taking place with this case. When we begin to look at the eye of justice, it has no color. The eyes of justice has no color. When the color dims it, then that makes it cease to be justice, because justice is clear. As my daddy said, justice is not muddy water. Justice is clear. So I'm really, this conversation, to those of you who are listening, when you have your family reunion, these are some of the things that you need to be talking about. You need to be talking about having a defense fund, because if you live long enough, somebody in your family going to need some legal representation. And not to get it, and have to carry the scar. Can you imagine Damon having to carry that scar all his life and not coming to this point to take that scar to the grave?
Yeah.
I thank God that you didn't have to do that. When I hear these kind of stories, I'm reminded of Dr. Martin Luther King when I remember sometimes, I think somebody had stabbed him. They did something, and he was saying, the doctor said if he had a sneeze, he would have died. You guys remember that story? And a little Caucasian girl wrote him a letter, and they read it. She said, I'm so glad that you didn't sneeze. So, folks, always be encouraged. There's somebody out there to help you, but you got to look for it and pray for it. But get that defense fund. I'm going to start my very next family reunion. We're going to put a fund together because I don't want to see anybody in my family behind bars because they can't afford a Mr. Donna Calabrius. I want them to be able to afford him. Okay? Go
Yes,
ahead.
ma'am.
Somebody else had a comment.
Dr. Rosa, I just want to quickly follow up on what you all were saying about the prison population. We have to understand that right now, prisons are private prisons. That means that they are locking up people and being paid for it.
Yes.
And it is so important that we understand that you're not necessarily going to get justice because there are billions of dollars that are being paid to these private prisons to keep you locked up. So going back to what you're saying about that prison fund, it is imperative that we sit down and have a serious conversation. I watched a brother the other day whose young 15-year-old son was out breaking in cars, and he made that boy stay in the bathroom for 2 days. And he wanted to represent what it was going to be like when he was in prison. He was going to smell urine. He was going to smell feces. He barely had a place to live. And people chastised that brother because he did that young man like that. We have to be honest and clear with our young black males to understand that they are a commodity in the prison system. Either they're going to cooperate outside or they're going to be made to cooperate inside.
Wow.
100% correct. It's a business. It's a business.
We want you all to make sure that you get that book because you get the full story and the full impact. And I think it's so important for young people to know, is my dad used to say, it's easy to get in trouble. He said, but baby, it's hard to get out.
Amen.
True
You
story.
need to tell them that. It's easy. It don't cost you to get in. It's free to get in trouble. Come on, go with me. Get in the car. Don't ask where I'm going. Just hop in. It's easy, but it's hard getting out. We got about 3
Where can we
minutes.
purchase the book?
Okay. Do we have any here at the store, Damon?
Yes, you do have some.
Yeah.
You can purchase them from Milligan Books.
Yeah. Person One Books on Manchester. Go to his website, Amazon.com, right?
Amazon.com. You can also purchase them online at BarnesandNoble.com. And for anybody listening to this show who would specifically like a signed copy, you can purchase those from the publisher directly at AnotherEPPublishingCompany.com. AnotherEPPublishingCompany.com. Dr. Milligan, thank you so much for having me back on your show. You have been a mentor. You have been a mentor of mine ever since I got into this literary game 26 years ago. And I follow everything that you do. The breakout sessions with the authors you do every year, it has helped me so much. And I just want to thank you for what you do for all of us as authors, but for the black community as a whole.
Well,
I love you and I appreciate you.
I thank you. And I want the attorney to have closing words. I am so inspired by what you've done and your belief. It's renewing, refreshing to see justice. It really is. So give us some closing remarks. Other than stay out of jail.
I think that thing that I'm left with is what Dameon has done, because he's overcome. We didn't talk about the first prosecution, but the first prosecution was probably the most offensive case I ever handled. That there was no evidence. There was actually evidence that he did not do what they charged him with. There was evidence as to who did it. And the jury, gave a closing argument. I walked into the hall and the bailiff called me back in. And I said, "What's going on?" He says, "They got a verdict already. They came back not guilty so quick." And when I went out, I talked to the foreman and I said, "Well, how'd you get it so quick?" All 12 of us said, "This is just horrible that they even brought this case." So to get back to the point, that seems to be the way in our society. Minorities somehow are treated differently. Yeah. And you have to be prepared for it. And you have to do what Dameon did. You keep going forward. You keep moving forward. And you make a life for yourself in spite of how they've tried to knock you down.
Wow.
Amen.
That's powerful.
Amen and amen again.
Never giving up. There's always going to be somebody somewhere. It's like being lost out in the woods and the bear's chasing you. You don't see anybody, but you got to keep hollering and screaming till somebody hear you. I tell folks, when you're drowning, holler when you need help, because guess what? Folks can't see you at the bottom of the pool. So while you're up, you got to yell for help. You don't know who will help you. If I need help, I don't care who's coming. When I ask God to send me help, I don't put a size on it. I don't put a color on it. I don't put a height on it. I don't put an economic status. I just say, send me some help, okay? So, Dameon, and to the attorney, for all of your listeners, I know you've been inspired. But the most important thing you can do, don't just be inspired. Take this with you. Take it to your community. Take these ideas to your church. Take it to anybody that you come in contact with, because this was Dameon's family, but tomorrow it may be yours. And if it is, my question is, then what you're going to do. Charmaine has something in the chat. Let's see what it says. Let's not forget about the women in jail and prison, which impact the entire family. Absolutely, Charmaine. Absolutely. And that number is growing as we speak. And anytime a person is impacted, that family is impacted. The whole family. So, we have our next show that's coming up. It's a young lady. She wrote a book called I Didn't Sign Up for This. How many of you dealing with stuff you didn't sign up for? Raise your hand. And hers deal with incarceration of her husband and how it impacted her family. So, I mean, we all can relate to the stuff we didn't sign up for. Some of these jobs you're on, you didn't sign up for, but you fell into the trap and you got to keep going. Folks, this has been a great show. Turnout, appreciate you so much. I'm going to always keep your phone number, because if something ever happened, remember my name, Dr. Rosie Milligan. I'm calling you.
Dr. Milligan?
Yeah.
If I may tell everybody before we end, if anybody wants to continue following my story of redemption, you can find me on Instagram at DKW_mentor. I would love to have you on my page, and I would be blessed by any engagement from anybody here on the show. Again, that's Instagram at DKW_mentor. God bless you all.
Right, and we have a hypnotism. Amina, a young lady that I knew her from birth, used to come to my business. Now she's out there. She's doing such a great job. Dameon, so at any point, I might have you to have a session with her.
I'm always available for whatever you need me for, Doctor. You know that.
Yeah, I want her to have a chat with you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay,
because hypnosis, all this is not what people think. It ain't somebody throw you into a spell. A lot of our people don't understand that, but it can be such a blessing. I tell you, anybody on here, you should really embrace yourself in that service. 'Cause I know you got some stuff you need to get out. How many got stuff in you need to get out? Raise your hand. Okay, you guys have a great day. Thanks, Charmaine. Thanks all of you for Brenda, Casada, everybody, David, all the way from across the country. Turn again. We can't thank you enough. We just gonna wear you out. You're gonna get sick of us because everybody all over the country now want to hear about Dameon. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank
Guys,
you.
have
Thank
a great
you.
day.
Thank you.